Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the motion for the approval of the estimates of the public sector and the budget for the financial year 2014. And in so doing, I wish to indicate that pursuant to Article 171, paragraph 2 of the Constitution, the Cabinet has recommended that the National Assembly proceed upon this motion. Budget 2014 seeks to continue the work this government has been doing to build a more modern and prosperous Guyana. It seeks to promote both the creation of employment and business opportunities and to better equip our citizens to avail themselves of those opportunities. It seeks to expand our physical infrastructure and improve linkages with our neighbours. It seeks to improve the quality of our social services and address the concerns of our citizens about the cleanliness of their physical surroundings. It seeks to further improve the competitiveness of our business environment and strengthen our institutions. Real GDP. Mr. Speaker, over the years, our government has aimed at creating an environment where the private sector can invest in profitable enterprise, expand production of goods and services, and create jobs. These efforts have resulted in a demonstrably more diversified productive base. It is this growing level of structural diversification, supported by our government's attention to stable macroeconomic fundamentals and prudent public financial management, that has contributed to the economic resilience we have achieved and that has enabled us to withstand testing external and domestic shocks. Mr. Speaker, in 2013, the Guyanese economy recorded its 8th consecutive year of growth, with real GDP expanding by 5.2%. Non-sugar GDP grew even more rapidly, by 6.3%, reflecting the underlying strength of the other sectors of the economy. Mr. Speaker, it is of particular significance to note that the 8 years from 2006 to 2013 represents the longest period of uninterrupted real economic growth in independent Guyana. Mr. Speaker, domestic prices remained relatively flat throughout the year, aided by government's continued financial support to the Guyana Power and Light, Inc. and other electricity suppliers in order to contain electricity prices, as well as close monitoring of fuel prices and taxes to dampen the pass-through of imported price volatility. In addition, our continued emphasis on food production ensured an adequate supply of food commodities throughout the year and helped to moderate prices. Altogether, these conditions resulted in consumer price index movement of 0.9% in 2013, the lowest rate of inflation in decades. Mr. Speaker, during 2013, the weighted average lending rate of the commercial banks increased by 8 basis points to 11.16%. This reflected a marginal increase from 11.08% in 2012, but notwithstanding this movement, private sector credit, as I just reported, continued to expand. The small savings rate declined by 36 basis points to 1.33%, while the 91-day Treasury bill rate remained stable at 1.45%. Mr. Speaker, transactions on the domestic foreign exchange market contracted by 5.8% to $6.4 billion. Key exchange rates remained stable throughout the year, and at the end of the year, the Guyana dollar was being traded against the US dollar at $206.25 compared to $204.5 a year ago. Mr. Speaker, over the years, our government has ensured that public sector employees are granted steady increases in their wages and salaries despite prevailing fiscal constraints. In keeping with this commitment, a 5% increase in salaries was granted to teachers in the public education system with effect from January 2013, pursuant to the Memorandum of Understanding entered into between government and the Guyana Teachers Union for the years from 2011 to 2015. Later in the year, government also granted a 5% across-the-board increase to all public servants and members of the disciplined services with effect from January 2013, along with a 1-month tax-free basic salary incentive paid to members of the disciplined services in December 2013. In addition, during 2013, government issued a new national minimum wage order, an initiative strongly supported by both the private sector and organized labor. This order, introduced with effect from the 1st of July 2013, and for the first time in our country's history, a national minimum wage applicable to all sectors of the economy, public and private. Set at $202 per hour, $1,616 per day, $8,080 per week, or $35,000 per month, this initiative would have benefited an estimated 31,000 working persons. Prior to the promulgation of this order, no national minimum wage was in force, and only a small number of specific categories of employment were the subject of sector-specific minimum wage orders. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, government reduced the personal income tax rate from 33.33% to 30% in 2013, resulting in more than 184,000 taxpayers benefiting from increased disposable incomes. Together, these initiatives contributed significantly to improving the well-being of the working people of Guyana. Real GDP. Mr. Speaker, the resilience of our economy has already been underscored by the achievement of 8 consecutive years of real growth up to 2013. The Guyanese economy is now projected to expand once again by 5.6% in 2014, with the non-sugar economy projected to grow by 5.2%. Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, the sugar industry is projected to record an improvement of 15.6% in output to 215,910 tons in 2014. As has previously been stated, the industry has played an important role in our national development, and this government will continue to provide support to transform the industry into a profitable one in the long term. The rice industry is projected to grow by a moderate 1%, with a production target of 540,793 tons, coming off the bumper crop of 2013. Livestock continues to be a major contributor to overall agriculture and is targeted to grow by 3.3% in 2014. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the forestry sector is programmed to expand by 3.3%, associated with improved monitoring and management practices. The fishing industry is projected to grow by 2.2%. Mining and quarrying is expected to return moderate growth of 2.8%, with gold, the dominant contributor to this sector, targeted to produce 484,562 ounces, modest growth of 0.7%, reflecting a somewhat conservative projection, but also taking into account of recent volatility in world market prices. The bauxite industry is projected to expand by 11.5%, mainly due to expanded production levels of metal-grade bauxite. Manufacturing is projected to grow by 7.1%, aided by the anticipated recovery of the sugar industry. The services sector is projected to grow by 6% in 2014. The construction sector, one of the main engines of growth in recent years, is expected to grow by 7.5%. Rental of dwellings is projected to grow by 9%. Wholesale and retail is projected to grow by 4.5%, in line with the anticipated growth performance of key commodity and manufacturing sectors. Transportation and storage is projected to grow by 8.4%. Information and communications, that sector is projected to grow by 4.2%. The banking sector is expected to grow to sustain its double-digit growth of recent years and is expected to grow by 11.8% in 2014. The electricity and water sector is projected to expand by 7.2%, while education, health, and other services are projected to grow by 4, 3.8, and 7.6%. Monetary policy and inflation. Mr. Speaker, the primary objective of monetary policy continues to be price stability. For the year 2014, an inflation rate of 5% is targeted. Balance of payments. The overall balance of payments is estimated to record an overall deficit of $21.9 million in 2014, compared to a deficit of $119.5 million in 2013. This outturn is on account of a higher surplus of $426.2 million on the capital account, compared to $314.8 million in 2013, reflecting principally increases in foreign direct investment and anticipated official disbursements. Targets for the non-financial public sector. Central government operations. Mr. Speaker, total current revenue, net of GRIF, is targeted to increase by 10.3% to $149.6 billion, with the Guyana Revenue Authority accounting for $135.3 billion. This is driven by a projected 8% increase in internal revenue collections to $55.8 billion, due to anticipated strong private sector performance at the company and self-employed levels. The returns of value-added and excise taxes are targeted to increase by 6.7% to $65.8 billion, associated with higher import levels. Non-tax revenue collections are projected to increase to $14.4 billion, reflecting projected higher Bank of Guyana profits. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure is projected to increase by 25.4% to $215.9 billion, mainly attributed to a $31 billion increase in capital expenditure due to acceleration of key infrastructure projects, including the CGIA modernization project and the commencement of key targeted environmental enhancement and rural enterprise projects. Non-interest current expenditure is budgeted to increase by 10.3% to $128.3 billion. This increase can primarily be attributed to continued investment in our social sectors. Mr. Speaker, the deficit of the central government is programmed at 4.9% of GDP in 2014, or $32.4 billion. Mr. Speaker, the size of Budget 2014 is $220 billion. Needless to say, Mr. Speaker, this represents Guyana's largest budget ever. Summary operations of the public enterprises. I'm happy to see, Mr. Speaker, that the announcement of the largest budget ever pleases my friends and colleagues on that side of the House immensely. Mr. Speaker, the overall deficit of the public enterprises is targeted at $2.1 billion, equivalent to 0.3% of GDP. This outturn is attributed to a 6.8% increase in expenditure to $137.9 billion. Operations of the non-financial public sector. Mr. Speaker, the overall deficit of the non-financial public sector is programmed at $34.6 billion, or 5.2% of GDP. Measures. Mr. Speaker, as I have previously indicated, this government has elevated as a principal macroeconomic objective the achievement and preservation of fiscal and debt sustainability into the medium and long term. For this reason, our fiscal deficits, including that for 2014, which I just announced, are contained to levels within a trajectory that will see Guyana meeting our financing needs of today without compromising our capacity to repay tomorrow. Inevitably, a delicate balance involving difficult choices is required to ensure that the investments needed to entrench accelerated economic growth and social development are made now, but also ensuring that they are made in a manner and at a pace closely aligned with the avoidance of penury and instead with the achievement of prosperity into the long term. With that constantly in mind, Mr. Speaker, Budget 2014 includes the following measures. Sugar industry. Mr. Speaker, much has already been said and will undoubtedly continue to be said in the coming weeks about the challenges that bedevil the sugar industry. One thing is clear and should never be in doubt. Our government's commitment to the long-term viability and profitability of the sugar industry has been unswerving throughout the years. And this commitment has manifested itself not in void rhetoric, but in tangible support. Mr. Speaker, if further evidence of our government's commitment to sugar were ever needed, and I doubt it ever was, Budget 2014 makes a provision for government to transfer a further $6 billion to Gaisuco to help the industry achieve the reversal of fortunes that it so badly needs. Mr. Speaker, without a doubt, a commensurate effort is required by all other stakeholders, including management and labor, to ensure that this long-standing bulwark of the Guyanese economy is restored to a profitable operation. The provision of this very tangible support by government to the sugar industry will benefit its 18,000 workers directly, including by helping to preserve their jobs, and a total of 120,000 persons directly or indirectly. Rice industry. Mr. Speaker, in much the same manner as the sugar industry has served our country well, so too has the rice industry. Thanks to favorable market conditions, along with supportive and facilitative initiatives by government, the industry has grown to an historic high. As is the case with any externally traded agricultural commodity, however, the industry's fortunes are affected by both weather conditions, which are increasingly unpredictable, and the vicissitudes of world market price volatility. It is therefore imperative that the industry be placed on a path that would sustain its strong performance, even under the most testing of conditions. In order to ensure that our rice industry retains its competitive advantage, even in harsher market conditions, Budget 2014 makes a provision of $500 million to be injected into the industry to support its efforts to increase competitiveness and resilience. Other agriculture. Mr. Speaker, agriculture continues to be one of the sectors that offer bright prospects for diversification of productive activity. Whether it is other crops or livestock for meat production, the potential exists for Guyana to meet considerably more of our domestic food requirements from local production. In much the same manner, the potential exists for a much larger share of the Caribbean's food import bill to be met from our domestic production. To this end, an expanded effort will be launched by government to promote increased and more diversified food production, including by the acquisition of planting material and breeding stock to farmers, along with expanded extension services. Mr. Speaker, for this purpose, a sum of $200 million has been allocated. Rural enterprise development. There can be no doubt that over the years our government has invested tremendously in rural development, in particular in infrastructure such as roads, bridges, drainage and irrigation, and community market facilities. The result has been increased business opportunities and raised quality of life throughout our villages. In order to promote more sustainable progress in rural communities, however, it is important to encourage a deepening of entrepreneurial activity in these communities. To this end, Mr. Speaker, our government intends to encourage and promote more aggressively the emergence of entrepreneurial ventures in rural communities with an emphasis on small businesses and labor-intensive activities, the principal aim being creation of jobs for young people. For this purpose, Mr. Speaker, a sum of $1 billion has been provided in Budget 2014 to support this rural enterprise development, and it is anticipated that thousands of persons will benefit either through employment obtained or other linkages from enterprise incubation grants or other facilities made available under this program. Tourism development. Mr. Speaker, I have already addressed the strong performance and bright prospects of our tourism and hospitality industry in recent years. Accommodation capacity has increased considerably, and the calendar of events has expanded significantly. Tourist arrivals, as I've already reported, have also increased, and important niche markets are emerging for our product. All indications are that this sector will be a key contributor to value-added production as well as job creation in the near and medium term. In an effort to improve the quality of the product we offer, and at the same time so as to ensure that our young people are better equipped to take advantage of the job opportunities that will be abound, the growing demand for skilled labor in the sector will need to be addressed. To this end, Mr. Speaker, this year, government will commence making a $4 million investment in the establishment of a hospitality institute to ensure that we produce world-class personnel for this important industry going forward. Port Georgetown. Mr. Speaker, the urgent need for capital dredging of the mouth of the Demerara River has been the subject of considerable attention from our government and from the private sector affected by its implications for shipping access to the river channel. The depth of the channel basin has been reduced to an unsatisfactory level, which has resulted in limitations in the draft of vessels able to transit the route. The consequence has been reductions of the volume of cargo per vessel being moved and increased freight costs. Government will establish this year a special purpose entity to address this matter and will work closely with the private sector during 2014 to raise the necessary financing for this endeavor to commence and be successfully executed. To support the preparatory work, Budget 2014 makes an allocation of $100 million to advance the required technical and other assessments. Guyana Power and Light Inc. Mr. Speaker, fuel prices remain high, and as was indicated last year, GPL has faced considerable challenges meeting the cost of its operations without a tariff increase since 2007. In order to ensure that the company can meet its investment and operational obligations, government has included an allocation of $3.7 billion to support critical capital inspection. I'll repeat that, Mr. Speaker. In order to ensure that the company can meet its investment and operational obligations, government has included an allocation of $3.7 billion to support critical capital expenditure by the company, without which steeper tariffs would be unavoidable. This support will ultimately redound to the benefit of all 170,000 of GPL's customers and their families. Linden Electricity. Mr. Speaker, no progress having yet been made on the matter of adjusting electricity tariffs in Linden. Budget 2014 allocates sums totaling $3.2 billion to continue to meet the cost of maintaining the electricity subsidy in Linden and Kwakwani, so that 10,500 electricity customers in Region 10 can continue to benefit from rates that are highly subsidized. As indicated last year, Mr. Speaker, this translates to a monthly benefit of over $23,000 for each electricity customer in the beneficiary area. Old age pensions. Mr. Speaker, recent years have been marked by dramatic increase in the non-contributory old age pension paid to persons over the age of 65 years. This monthly cash supplement has been increased annually from $3,500 in 2006 to $12,500 last year. Budget 2014 provides for the old age pension to be increased by 5% with effect from 1st of May 2014 to $13,125 monthly. This increase will result in a total of $212.5 million in additional disposable income being placed in the hands of 42,500 of our senior citizens, and will bring the total old age pension bill to $6.6 billion. Old Age Pensioner Electricity Assistance Program. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the old age pension we pay every month to our senior citizens, government also assists our old age pensioners to pay the water charges due to GWI at an annual cost in excess of $200 million. Last year, we introduced an annual contribution of $20,000 payable, an annual contribution of $20,000 payable to every old age pensioner who is a customer of GPL, helping them to meet the electricity charges they incur with that company. I'm now pleased to announce that with effect from 2014, the value of this electricity assistance program will be increased by 50% to $30,000 per annum for each eligible old age pensioner beneficiary. Mr. Speaker, this will result in an additional this will result in an additional $300 million of disposable income being placed in the hands of our most senior citizens. Hinterland roads. Mr. Speaker, access to our hinterland communities remains absolutely critical to the well-being of our most remote communities. Mr. Speaker, access remains absolutely critical to the well-being of our most remote communities, as well as to the economy of our country as a whole. The opportunities that arise from improved access to Brazil via the Linden to Lethem Road, the reduced costs associated with accessing hinterland villages when our interior roads are in passable condition, the economic advantages that arise when hinterland routes are open, all make a compelling case for investment in hinterland roads, and all redound to the betterment of our hinterland communities. To meet this need, Mr. Speaker, Budget 2014 provides an allocation of $1 billion to be expended on rehabilitating critical interior arteries, including the Linden to Lethem Road. Cleanup campaign. Mr. Speaker, there can be no doubt in the minds of any observer that the city of Georgetown, and indeed many other places in Guyana, have a serious sanitation problem. Piles of garbage and litter abound. The national public health hazard that this presents, especially in the face of emerging disease, can no longer be ignored. Notwithstanding the statutory responsibility of the local government bodies for maintaining the environment in our communities and neighborhoods, it is visibly evident that they have failed in the discharge of this basic duty. Government can no longer stand by in hope, waiting in vain for comatose local government bodies to address this problem. In an attempt to address this issue, government will spearhead an effort that will result in the capital city, all other towns and rural villages implementing a Clean Up My Community action plan that will address the collection and removal of garbage, as well as the reporting of residents who irresponsibly dispose of their garbage. Citizens, businesses, and institutions will be tasked with ensuring that their garbage is properly discarded in appropriate receptacles. Efforts will be made to enlist the support of the private sector and other institutions to assume greater involvement in helping to maintain the environment in which they operate. Mr. Speaker, while the support and involvement of businesses and households alike will be required to ensure the success of this initiative, government will allocate the sum of $1 billion to this Clean Up My Country initiative, of which the sum of $500 million will be dedicated to immediate efforts in the capital city. Education grants. Mr. Speaker, government has already made significant investments in the education sector, seeking to ensure universal access and to raise both quality of delivery and attainment rates. The result has been the achievement of universal primary education and significant progress towards achieving universal secondary education. Supportive programs have included the National School Feeding Program and the National School Uniform Program, both of which have helped to lift attendance rates, and in particular in the case of the former, raise classroom attentiveness and participation. Mr. Speaker, in an effort to provide additional support to parents with school-aged children, government will provide this year a cash grant to the parents of every child attending a nursery, primary, or secondary school in the public education system in the amount of $10,000 per child for the year. This grant can be used to meet such costs as transportation and will provide added impetus to raising enrollment and attendance rates, in addition to having the effect of increasing the disposable incomes of the parents of school-aged children. Mr. Speaker, this initiative will benefit the families of the 188,406 students of the public nursery, primary, and secondary school system, and will place in the hands of these parents $2 billion of additional disposable income. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that notwithstanding the introduction of these measures, along with all of the other expenditure plans announced, Budget 2014 is fully financed and introduces no new taxes. Mr. Speaker, as you might shortly discover, the front cover of the printed version of this year's budget speech bears a number of quotations alluding to the natural beauty, vast wealth, and evident potential of Guyana from a number of prominent contemporary sources. One of my favorite external references to Guyana of all time is, however, much older and much more preeminent than any of these, if I may say so. More than 4 centuries ago, the inestimable William Shakespeare lyricized metaphoric designs to plunder, in his words, and I quote, Guyana, all gold and bounty. Guyana with an I, 4 centuries ago, of course. Since the days of the great bard of Avon to now, successive generations have sung and celebrated the wealth and promise of this land that today is ours. 400 years later, those of us who live here today have within our grasp whether to be just the latest generation to laud the potential of Guyana, or whether to be the generation that realizes and harvests that potential. We can philosophize and intellectualize endlessly, but there is good reason for skepticism whether the philosophy alone can bring us the prosperity that we have sought for so long. What matters now, and equally what will ultimately matter, are the practical things we do today to contribute to making our country a better place. And we're not short of examples of what such things would be. They include ensuring that the climate and environmental services provided by our standing forests are adequately remunerated by the global consuming community. This would generate revenue for our country and preserve our endowment of nature. They include attracting the inflows of private capital to make Guyana self-sufficient in clean energy and to make Guyana an exporter of renewable energy. This would reduce the cost and improve the reliability of power and earn inflows from energy exports. They include producing more food for domestic consumption and for export to the Caribbean, creating growth opportunities for our agricultural sector. They include making Guyana a major exporter of services in the global business process outsourcing industry creating technology-based jobs for our young people. They include making Guyana a destination of first choice by the global tourists looking for forest and nature adventure, thereby creating business opportunities in our hospitality sector. They include ensuring that every single young Guyanese is sufficiently well educated and equipped with the skills required to enter and succeed in the world of work, thereby earning an income for themselves and contributing to the national productive effort. They include ensuring that every citizen has access to a safe and clean environment, thereby contributing to their own wellness and well-being. Mr. Speaker, these are the kinds of things that matter to our fellow citizens individually and to our country as a whole. These are the things that Budget 2014 is all about. To be fair, it would be an easy and perhaps understandable mistake to underestimate how some of these things impact on our lives. To the farmer of cash crops in Blackbush Polder who wonders why hydropower should matter to him, I would say, Mr. Speaker, that cheaper and more reliable power would make it more feasible for agro-processing businesses to operate in Guyana and would therefore create markets for the fruits and vegetables he cultivates. To the housewife and mother in Denamstel who wonders how our ICT strategy is relevant to her, I would say that every ICT job that is created is an employment and income opportunity for her children when they leave school and start to look for work. To the Tushao in Moritaro who wonders what attracting foreign direct investment to Guyana would do for him and his village, I would say that every additional dollar of revenue earned by our country as a result of every investment attracted by our country makes us better able to improve the school, the health hut, and other social infrastructure in his village. To the taxi driver from Charlestown who wonders how investment in the gold industry will benefit him, I would say that every dollar of earnings generated by that industry will be used to buy goods and services multiplied many times over in the economy and will generate greater demand for services like his. Mr. Speaker, every day, each and every single one of us has an opportunity to make Guyana a better place for ourselves and for our countrymen. Whether we teach a child to read or we repair an engine, whether we treat a patient or we saw some timber, whether we pan some gold or we cut some cane, whether we paint a fence or we sew some trousers, whether we bake some bread or sell an insurance policy, whether we create a job or open a business, whether we build a bridge or carve a sculpture, we are producing and we are earning. And the more of it we do and the more efficiently we do it, the more prosperous we will be, and so too will our country. Mr. Speaker, as I have said on several other occasions, none of us enjoys the luxury of being a passive onlooker at the determination of either our own fortunes of that of our country. Instead, we are involved, and the tasks of improving our own lives and making Guyana a better place are no less in our own hands than in anybody else's. Mr. Speaker, this is what Budget 2014 is all about: creating a better Guyana, a Guyana of greater opportunity for all Guyanese. It might be somewhat ironic for me to say it at this hour, but had brevity not been a paramount consideration, the theme of this year's budget could equally have been, by all Guyanese, a better Guyana for all Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, the privilege is now mine on behalf of this People's Progressive Party civic government to commend Budget 2014 to the National Assembly of Guyana. I thank you very much.